All right. Welcome to the Sense and Signal podcast, folks, with Jodah and Dan, where we talk about leadership and sense making. And today we are going to talk about Elon Musk and the F bomb that was heard around the world. In case you did not hear before or have not been on YouTube, Elon Musk was attending New York Times Deal Book Summit and was being interviewed, and he was asked about advertisers pulling out, and he basically told the audience, which included the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, who's one of the companies that have been pulling off of X. He basically told them to go F themselves, and that he didn't want them advertising on his platform. So, Jodah, what's your take on that? I should also frame this in our podcast is not a culture wars podcast necessarily. So I know people are on both sides of this. There are the Elon haters who are condemning him for that. And there are the Elon cheerleaders who are going, yeah, stick it to the man. We're going to probably take a different avenue with this conversation, in which we're going to talk about, well, is this appropriate behavior for a CEO, and what are the consequences of this kind of behavior, especially if you don't have the effort money that Elon Musk has. So, what's your take, Jodah?
I think it's a good point. He definitely has effort money to sit back, and that's kind of what he said, right? Like, you're going to use money? You're going to
blackmail me.
To blackmail me? He's basically saying, I'm too rich for that. What are you trying to do? So, my knee-jerk reaction is probably it's complex, right? I mean, first off, as a leader, you know me, Dan. I'm actually an Elon fan for the most part. I don't think
Same here. There's a lot of.
And when I
Elon.
say that, people, it doesn't mean I agree with everything the guy says. But functionally speaking,
be nuanced here, folks.
Yes, exactly. But when I'm saying functionally speaking, I appreciate his drive and what he's trying to do, and I believe fundamentally that he's trying to do good for the human society, for the humans. I believe that. Now, you might not. I'm just saying I do. And so then that clouds or colors a lot of my take.
You got some bias. You got some bias in favor of him.
I totally have bias in favor of him, right? So on one hand, I love the idea that he's kind of eschewing the sort of crowd mob mentality at times that can kind of make bad decisions occur. On the other hand, and we'll go into detail, I won't go into the specifics now, we can talk about it. But on the other hand, I am not comfortable with, if I was an employee at X,
right,
how I'd be feeling right now.
Yeah,
as
because
a
you
CEO.
feel like your company's in jeopardy, right?
I don't know.
You're probably you don't know, right? Because the data is not coming in yet. You're not going to be able to see the data. I know people are posting on Twitter or what is now currently called X and other platforms, like, oh well, the number of subscribers or advertisers are going down here or there. They don't really know that number. They're making that up. Those are just bots.
Sure. Yeah, probably.
Right? So we don't know any data from the consequences of this for X, formerly known as Twitter, or the Disney company, because that's also kind of part of this conversation too, where people are calling for a boycott on Disney as well. As Elon said during that interview, people are already boycotting Disney. I mean, to me, this whole thing is very complex because, as you said, on one hand, you've got this outlier figure, Elon Musk, who has billions of dollars. So, and he can't say F it. I don't care. I don't really even care if the company goes under, really. I'm sure he cares to some level. But to your point, as an employee there, if that is his mentality, I would be nervous as an employer, but probably looking for work elsewhere, worried that the employment carpet was going to be pulled out from under me.
Or you're like seeing it pulled out before your eyes.
Yeah, like literally, like in live time. Like, oh man, they're with my job, because more advertisers are likely to pull out because of it, especially the big advertisers who have the big dollars to spend on a platform like that. But you have this outlier figure, Elon Musk, and I agree. There's something like, yeah, man, stick it to the man, but at the same time, Elon is kind of the man. He's a billionaire. He's not like he's not even a common CEO because he doesn't even have to report to a board of
No, well, I
trustees for
think we all
Tesla
know
or
he's an
X or
alien,
anything.
right? Isn't that what it is? That we've agreed that he's actually from another planet. So I
Yeah,
don't
he
even know.
must be, right? Well, I mean, I don't even. I want to. It's kind of inspiring me to maybe read that biography that just came out about him
Yeah,
to really
yeah,
understand how he built his wealth and his leadership style.
yeah.
Because he has multiple companies. He has Tesla, he has SpaceX, he has X now, formerly Twitter, some other companies as well.
Does he still
Um,
have Solar City? Yeah, I mean it's amazing the all the
yeah,
pieces he's
he
putting
could have
together.
had
Yeah.
OpenAI too at some point. So
Well, he did at one point.
well, he was one of the founders. He was at least at
Yeah.
the initial at the table during the initial discussions of founding that nonprofit. So he's successful. He's a very successful man. But again, he's an outlier. Like I don't know if the average CEO could get away with doing what Musk did because most of them are reporting to boards of trustees,
Well,
right?
and that's an interesting. I mean, yeah. So what does a CEO do, right? And because he's sitting up there on top of the throne right now, and all these companies, and there is sort of a king level to him in these things, especially if his companies are not traded publicly. And he made a statement he will never have a company publicly traded again, a little while ago, because of he doesn't like the lack of control when you have
Yeah,
oversight from the
exactly.
SEC
Because
and the
you can't
board.
tell everyone to go f themselves if
Mm-mm.
you're a
No,
publicly
and
traded
when he's
company.
sole owner, you can have a board, and it's probably still smart to have one, but you don't have to listen to them. And so, but the question is like, what? Not to go too deep, but what does a CEO do? What's the point? What are they there to do for the company,
Well,
right?
there's obviously
And
the public facing part
and
of the
is he doing
CEO's
it?
role.
That's right. And it's also, to try to improve the company, make more money. It depends on what the company's goals are. And so is he doing that well when he gets on a pulpit like that and says F you to the advertisers? Is he doing the best thing for the company, or is his FU money making him slightly selfish and just egotistical and saying F you to
Narcissistic.
narcissistic, saying F you to all the people that work at those companies as well?
Yeah, because is he thinking about what he said if the advertisers pull out that the company will crash and that's going to impact a lot of jobs in this and already volatile tech sector where people are getting laid off all over the place.
Yeah.
So that can't help or morale at his company. And then he's also just brought in a new CEO from, I believe, CNBC. Um, Her name is uh, Linda Yasarino from CNBC, I believe, or at least the NBC Corporation. He brought her on
Okay.
as CEO to help build relationships with advertisers because of her experience in the
Yeah.
corporate media sector, building relationships with advertisers. He wanted to bring that to the X platform, kind of undermined her efforts as well.
I would think so.
Although,
It's
interestingly, she came out in his defense afterwards. You
Oh,
know,
I did not read that. What'd she say?
she released basically a statement supporting what he said, and that essentially that as a free speech platform, some people might be uncomfortable with that, and that they should go elsewhere. Basically, she was supporting what he was saying. And it's interesting, the argument that they're making, right, is that companies like Media Matters have been going to advertisers and saying, hey, here are all these posts that are hateful, full of hate speech, and the ads are right next to your advertising. And
Hmm.
so if people see that ad and that message next to each other, they're going to think that you're endorsing that, which, let's be honest, is stupid. It's a stupid argument. If I go on, I'm
It sounds
sorry,
stupid. I'm gonna say it's not stupid, but
I'm going to say
I'll
it's
tell you why I say
stupid.
it. All right. All right.
Okay, well, let me just make. I just went
Make your
on
point.
X and I was kind of going through the feed, seeing all kinds of different posts from different people, and looking at a lot of advertisements while I was doing that. At no point did I see like these custom pants with animals on it that was being advertised. Did I think that they were associating themselves with Jordan Peterson just because he had a post right above it, right? At no
Right.
point did I think that. So I don't think just because you see an ad that's randomly generated on a feed next to a particular type of post that you're going to say that they're related to one another, unless you're just unless you're not a very bright person. So you disagree with me there?
No, well, nuance. I
Okay.
totally agree. I mean, in my world, me viewing the subject matter, I don't think I'm going to be necessarily assuming. Although I'm not 100% sure, depending on how the system's structured and laid out. I might, but I don't know. I'm not on Twitter, but I agree that in modern world, knowing how
It's no longer
YouTube
Twitter, Joda. It's X.
X, yeah. And I still call Starbucks like small, medium, large instead of what do they want, Vente,
Grande.
grande. No, it's medium. Give me a break.
I
Anyways,
just say 16 ounce.
that's what I say. And I say 12, 16, 8. That's what I say for now.
Yeah, I don't do those names either.
And that's something to think about as we move forward. But anyways, I agree with you that I think functionally speaking, most people aren't really swayed or care about the advertising to some degree, and especially if I'm a neo-Nazi watching something, and then all of a sudden Le Schwab tire commercial come on, I'm not going to automatically assume these guys are endorsing in today's world. On TV, you would have, though, right? Because Le Schwab would be buying time and they'd be saying what kinds of shows they want to probably be associated with. So I don't think that it's silly for people who have brand control. And trust me, I've worked for companies that have very strong brand control to not want their stuff to even be close to anything that might be as a resemblance of whatever we want to qualify as.
Well, I think it's a changing nature of the media then, because yeah, you're right. If we were talking about a television network station, there's a lot of curation that goes on with the advertising and where it's placed. But in a platform like Facebook or X or Instagram, it's all random. I mean, the ads aren't like, they're not aligning certain types of ads with certain types of posts for the most part, based on the way I understand it. Maybe they are. Yeah. I mean, that would be interesting to know. I think it's more likely that the ads are being aligned with your interests, right? We know that because you do a search on Amazon, suddenly your Facebook feed is filled with leaf blowers, right?
Yeah, no, sure.
But
sure.
At the same time, I don't. So I guess at the same time, to get back on point, I don't think it's appropriate for a CEO to speak out like Elon Musk did. I think he has the effort money, and more power to him to be able to do that. But I think it's in any type of leadership position, you are representing the company and the workers that you are leading, and that it's unfair to them and the overall company for you to behave like that, especially when it's going to attract a lot of negative publicity. And as part of this, maybe in a second we could talk about this a little bit more, but I think this gets into a conversation I've been wanting to have about whether or not executive leaders should even get involved in any conversations regarding culture war type stuff.
Yeah. Well, again, I have a slightly different take. I agree. How do I agree? Do I agree? So,
yeah, what do you agree with, Joda?
I do think that Elon Musk plays in 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional chess. Not unlike Donald Trump, who I think also plays in 4-dimensional.
I think you're giving him too much credit.
Donald or Elon?
Both.
Oh, interesting. No, I mean, Elon's from another planet, so he definitely comes from another dimension. So I think that the things he does. Well, let's look at some of his past things he's done, because he has other transgressions. So, for example, remember that tweet he made about, was it that he was going to take considering taking Tesla private? All of a sudden, the shares jumped. SEC jumped all over him. He had to make a deal. That was purposefully, and I can almost guarantee. I would almost bet whatever payment he had to give to the SEC, he won in that in that engagement. He got what he needed to do. That was complete faux pas by him from a standards approach, but you don't always win by playing in the rules.
Yeah, no, he's a renegade. He's a maverick.
A rule player, right? I mean, look at the other. Look at Travis Kalanick.
His whole persona. Even when he was on stage at that New York Times event, he was wearing a leather jacket, and was taking
Absolutely.
a posture of his
I'm
whole
surprised
brand
he's
is the
wearing
Maverick.
shoes, And you and I have discussed this. This is very Silicon Valley, historically speaking. The guy from Uber, Travis Kalanick. I mean, they purposely went into places and disrupted and broke laws. Like they knew it. They wanted the lawsuits. I mean, that was part of their mechanism. Mark Zuckerberg, totally under the gun for like just giving our information away, knowing that he's probably breaking all sorts of rules and social faux pas. Martin Shkreli, remember him? I mean, he just
Oh yeah.
jumped up. I mean, these guys try to break the rules and see what comes back at them, and half the time they kind of win, even if they get punished, because the punishments are so light and meaningless at times.
Unless you're like
So,
that blood testing lady, that one, she's in jail now.
what was her name? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So and so again, I guess what my point being is like, do I think he's doing exactly what he wants to do to move whatever he wants to move forward, but possibly and most likely at the expense of the little people. And I do believe Elon cares fundamentally for the human race. I don't think Elon Musk cares fundamentally about any one person, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. That's interesting. But okay, so we can agree on that as far as, well, maybe some of what you just shared about your thoughts on Elon Musk, but he's just an object example that brings us into a larger conversation, right? He has chosen to be this culture war figure, standing up for freedom of speech is what he claims is his central cause. Although there are critics who say that's not necessarily the case, because X still censors speech in some cases. So how absolutist is he on that? But all that's almost beside the point for the real discussion we should probably be having about this. As a CEO, and not every CEO, and not anybody who is in an executive leadership position with an organization has the ability to behave like Elon Musk does. And so,
and historically, they didn't. Historically, they were almost bureaucratic. They were quiet.
yeah,
They were the banker, historically speaking.
yeah. And now you do have people taking more, advancing social issues more through their position in organizations, and some are asking them to do that. Like, I think on the left, there is a demand almost that CEOs speak out on political issues, especially political cultural issues that are hot at the moment. And the question is, should you be doing that when you're in a leadership position? I think it's contextual depending on the type of organization you're leading, but I'm increasingly coming down on the side that you should not say anything. Because we are a country so divided, no matter what you say, you're going to tick off half the world, or at least half of Western civilization.
All right. So let's break this down a little bit. What you're saying, functionally speaking, is if a CEO steps into the fray of anything that remotely smells of some sort of what's the term? Divisive cultural thing. Yeah. That most likely they're going to be collecting 50% of the audience and losing 50%. That's best case scenario, right?
Well, you never know, because even those 50% sides are fractured, right? So
sure, I'm just like loosely saying, like,
yeah,
best case
loosely,
scenario, like you're
very
kind of
loosely.
So it really depends on what your goals are. If you know that if your audience particularly is never going to really care about your product, or 150%, that maybe jumping into the fray of some sort of cultural divide is exactly what you want to do. So an example, and I can't give a specific, but an example would be like the NRA jumping in on cultural divide, talking about something perhaps.
But that's a very specific advocacy group.
All right, well, maybe not NRA, a gun company. Right, promoting the NRA. Now they know they're going to lose 50%, and they're okay. They're going to double down on the gun cultural war, because they know it's going to get more of the people who care about guns to buy, and they don't even care about people who don't want guns, because they know they're not there in the first place, and they're not in the business of trying to convert people to like guns, right? So when you say you don't think you should get into it, I would say enter at your own risk. but you might be doing it. You might have a strategy to do it. You might be calling it
So
out. It didn't work for Coors. Coors
taking a
didn't work, right?
Machiavellian. You're taking a Machiavellian approach to this. It's
Oh,
like
absolutely. Yeah.
do it if it's going to benefit your company. If you're doing it
I'm saying
strategically
as a
and the
leader,
outrage is going to benefit you, then go for it.
I'm not saying. I'm saying that as a CEO, they might look into it as that perspective. I have morals, so I probably would like to think I would make a real stance. But in a Machiavelli perspective, as a CEO, you're saying stay out. I'm not saying get in, but if you're looking at like optimizing a particular customer base, maybe jumping into the fray is exactly what you want to do. If you
Mm.
don't care about the wreckage that you're causing elsewhere,
I
possibly.
don't know. I just see, I just see a lot of demand for people to speak out, especially when they're in leadership positions on different topics. And I don't necessarily think that's always the best option.
Do you think they're
You know,
losing when they do that? I mean, if you see a lot of it, don't you think it might be winning for them from a almost a Darwinian perspective, or has it just not caught up to them yet?
well, give me an example. What do you mean?
Oh, I know. You're saying you've seen a lot of people kind of jumping into the fray. We'll
Well,
take
yeah,
Elon for example.
and of course, I work in a higher ed setting, so of course, people want the leadership to speak out on different topics. So, there are currently topics that I know we don't want to get into on this podcast that are very volatile.
Let's do it, dude. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
well, all right, fine.
It's
Israel,
not even really necessary, but yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's Israel and Palestine, right?
Right.
So people want you to take a side on that. Well, no matter what you say, you're going to tick off a lot of people,
Yeah.
no matter what you do. So, and then the question comes up, and I think this is even more nuanced: is if you start speaking out about things, then at some point something's going to come up that you're not going to speak out on, and somebody's going to say, "Well, you spoke up about that thing over there, but my cause has come up now. Why aren't you speaking up about that?" And then you're constantly having to
Right.
say something anytime
Yeah.
anything happens, and I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's also problematic too, because it's just kind of creating more fuel for the different fires that are going on. And honestly, I think as an organizational leader, your job is to pursue the mission of your organization and stick to that. And it's not necessary because really, honestly, if you're like president at a community college, for instance, or if you're even a CEO at a company, you could speak out on something, but are you really going to have that much influence? Because that's the theory, is that enough people speak out on something, it's going to change the course of world events. I don't really necessarily think that's the case.
So you're saying, man, there's a lot to unpack there. From an individual perspective, even not if you're in a position of power or potential fame, you're not saying I shouldn't speak my mind simply because it doesn't matter. You're not saying that, but
No, I'm not saying that.
you are saying that if you are in a position that has the ear of a lot of people, pick your approaches carefully because you're taking unnecessary risks. Doesn't mean you shouldn't voice yourself, but think about it strongly before you start to, because is it going to be moving the needle in any significant way, and
Exactly.
will be causing probably maybe more grief for you than anything else. And so
What's
just
the
be
calculus of the
cautious.
situation, right?
Yeah.
Like, does it, if like, I don't think it's incumbent upon you to make a statement about every damn thing that happens in the world, because the world's full of horrible things.
Yeah.
Horrible things will continue to happen throughout our lives, throughout human history. I don't find me a peaceful moment in human history.
Yeah.
I dare you. There's
Yeah.
always something catastrophic and tragic and terrible going on. So when do you choose to speak out, right? And what's your metric for determining that? Because you want to be consistent, right? Because the person who's going to come up to you and say, hey, you spoke out about that. Why aren't you speaking out about this over here? Has a valid point, and you better be able to explain why you're choosing to speak out about one thing and not something else.
Yeah. I think CEOs and particularly people in leadership are in a catch-22 because we're in a world now where the concept of organizational teams is been blurred, especially working from home. right? On some level, it's blurred the notion of the separation of work and casual life and your normal life. And we know, especially with the advent of diversity and equality in workplaces and making sure that people are happy, right? I mean, more and more I hear these terms. When I first started off, those weren't really natural terms. Now more and more, happiness at work and things like that. I think leaders are feeling pressure to address certain things like these inequalities and stuff like that. And it puts them in an untenable situation, because if they don't, they look cold-hearted. And like you said, that's probably for most cases the best approach, because the ramifications of you looking kind of like disconnected, there's probably far less than looking connected in the wrong way, right?
Well,
It's
yeah. Well, I think also until you have all the facts in place too, that's the other aspect of speaking out. So I remember when I was doing my dissertation, I interviewed a president at a small rural college in the South who had dorms, and there was a case where a student was accused of leading a gang rape against a woman, right? And he was encouraged to speak out about it right away. Luckily, he didn't, because the student ended up being cleared of the charges. And if he had come out right away and taken a stance, that could have been catastrophic for his career. It could have been catastrophic for the student. Horrible. It would have been horrible for the school. But we've seen that before. We've seen that scenario play out at other institutions where people in executive leadership positions have spoken out, and faculty and staff have spoken out before all the facts were in, and it's resulted in lawsuits. And we find out later that all the facts weren't available at the time, and so people were making statements about, things without all the facts, and the person that they were condemning is actually completely innocent.
It sucks, because we're in this outrage culture now. Again, this show's not about that. We're from a leadership perspective only. I'm going to stand on that concept that I think leaders are sometimes in an untenable situation, because if they don't jump on it early enough and they come late to a game and it turns out it was true, then they're poo-pooed on again as well, right? They're looked at as being like the game. They're only moving because everybody else is moving, and they want to make sure they're not being left out. I do think that, again, in the modern world, it's expected for these leaders to take certain stance. I agree with you. I think the best way is to say, you know what, I'm running Les Schwab. I'll let you guys figure all that stuff out. I just care for the happiness of my people that work for me and the company's success. Next question, please. That's the best approach, probably the safest approach, if you don't have any other ulterior motives or plans based upon playing divisive.
Yeah, and I think you work with your PIO to polish that message and come up with a plan for when things like that come up, right? When you are asked, so you're prepared for it. And I think your organization too, in your communications plan, working with the public information officer and that team to make sure you're prepared and ready when something does arise. How are you going to respond? I think that's just part of crisis management and preparation too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I functionally, I think, if you're a CEO, well, we're all human, but if you're looking at a CEO as a service to the organization, that's its function as a service to the organization, then it's important that the CEO maintains that connection as a service to organization. It's questionable whether Elon is that per se. I think Elon is a service to Elon. And again, God bless him.
Yeah.
I functionally like him for the most part, but I don't think I'd ever want to work for him, and so I think he's failing his company to some degree, and or to a greater degree. And it's even been stated that, not to change the subject real quick, but it's even stated that he's actually trying to drive X to go bankrupt, that these are actions to make that occur, like in that way. And he is documenting everybody who's leaving, so he can bring that to the filing to say that people bailed on us and this is blah blah blah, whatever. So he might even just want X to go away. And someone wrote that under normal circumstances you would sell it to somebody who goes, okay, well, we'll bring X back to life again. I'll pay $5 billion for it. Okay, thanks, $5 billion. So people are thinking Elon's such an ego guy. He's like, no, I'm going to drive this thing into the ground. Again, all those poor employees are victims of that ego. And so it really does matter. I mean, these CEOs, if they have that kind of ego, it can F things up, man. It can really be unfair to the common person.
Well, lots to think
It
about.
reminds me of the robber baron. I was looking up robber baron era, and I didn't even realize that robber baron literally meant they were barons that robbed. And we're kind of in that stage right now to some degree. I think we're kind of in a new version of the robber baron era.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely in another type of gilded age. Yeah, especially with Bezos and a lot of the other uber wealthy tech giants.
Billionaires.
But anyways.
Billionaires.
Yeah. F them. F you, billionaires.
Or throw some money my
yourself,
way.
Billionaires.
Give me some of your cash. I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll do a more positive episode on you. Just send me some money.
Billionaires, love them.
You can blackmail me into doing a positive episode. I'm cheap.
Billionaires are amazing. They totally the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah, they're awesome. Yes. You can send. Here's my address. I'll send it to you. Put in the chat.
All right. Well, we didn't solve anything here as usual, but we'll probably raise some questions. Probably lost some listeners.
Complicated the situation a little bit. I hope you're effed up a little in the head now.
Yeah, but if you liked it, hit the subscribe button, please comment. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk and his F-bomb that was heard around the world? And F you, Jodah. F you. All right, well, we'll see you next time, folks.